My name is Sade Jenkins. I'm here with the publicity team at Netflix. And we are very excited for you guys to be with us on Deliverance Eve, okay? Because Deliverance is out tonight. Make sure y'all press play. But I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to hand it to my lovely partner here, Chadwick Smith.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I am Chadwick Smith. I'm an impact strategist with Values Partnerships, and we are here partnering with Netflix on tonight's Clips and Conversations. And so tonight is all about exploring the religious themes of Lee Daniels' new movie. And we do have a host for tonight. Our host is Candice Benbow. Candice is a multi-genre theologian who's really focused on improving the lives of Black women and girls. You may know her from the Lemonade syllabus that she did after Beyonce's Lemonade album was released. And so, let's give a warm welcome to Candice Benbow.
Thank you. Hey, y'all. I am excited to be with you all tonight. Welcome to, as she said, Deliverance Eve, Clips and Conversations. So before we get started, because I'm going to forget, I need to do a disclaimer that there may be some colorful language that you will hear in some of these clips from the movie. But if you grew up in the Black Baptist church like me, you done heard it from your grandmama like 5 times, so it's nothing new. But I am going to introduce our amazing panel for the evening. We're gonna start with the amazing filmmaker himself, Mr. Lee Daniels. Hi, thank you. And we have Dr. Nichole Phillips. She is an assistant professor of the practice of religion and society and culture at Candler School of Theology, as well as the director of the Black Church Studies Department. And we have Dr. Teddy Reeves, who is a curator of religion at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and that's my seat. So we are excited to be here. We're going to, before we get started, we're going to see, I want to tell you a bit about Deliverance. Deliverance is a film about a struggling single mother that moves her family into a new home for a fresh start. But when strange occurrences in the home threaten to tear the family apart, she soon finds herself locked in a battle for her life and the souls of her children. Stars in this film include Andra Day, Glenn Close, Monique, and Ingenue Ellis Taylor. Tonight, we are going to see a couple of these pieces, but in addition to our the film, we're joined by Lee. It says Andra's here.
Nuh-uh.
Okay, so
He had to perform.
okay, when you see her, please tell her that she sang I don't know who holds tomorrow. It's a song in the you heard it as you were. She sang it. That's one of my new favorites. But before we get started, we are actually going to see a clip from Lee telling us about the film and why he decided to make it. There were many times watching this when I was like, this feels so familiar. And part of it was because I was born and raised in church. These were some of the conversations that I heard when we were talking about spirit possession and deliverance. Talk to us a little bit about your background and really what drew you to this project.
I'm an Episcopalian, but both of my grandmothers were they were not, and so they were Pentecostal,
Mm-hmm.
and they would take me. They were Pentecostal, both of them, but both of their children separated from the church because it was just too much for them,
Mm-hmm.
and so they became Episcopalian, highfalutin Episcopalians in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And but my grandparents, both of my grandmothers, would snatch me and bring me back to their church. So it's a little bit of both. And I was just told that that's a thing, which is really fascinating. I didn't know that until I thought I was just a solo here on it. look, for me, this was present. I did a movie called Precious, and so right after Precious, this movie was presented to me. The idea was presented to me. It was based on a true story, and I didn't do it for two reasons. Then the first was that it was as an artist, it was too similar to Precious because, this woman, the real life story was that this woman was an alcoholic that was hitting her kids, and but not abusing them, and so the kids would come to school with bruises on, and so the cops came, the principal came, social worker came to the house to take the kids from the mother, and then the kid was crawling up the wall in front of them, and it's all documented in court documents and from the judge and from the police, and in her documentary she talks about it, and so it's fascinating, it's really fascinating as a storyteller to tell that type of story. We have not seen that story before in our community, and so after Precious, I decided that it wasn't for me because I didn't want to. The way I direct is, I'm an open portal, and so all of my work is so grounded, and so it's almost like you're watching a documentary sometimes, and so I know what I demand from my actors. I know what I demand from me, and I just felt like, and my mom really was like, no, because we don't want any of that negative. We don't want any of that on you. So I purposefully didn't do it. But then, I feel what's in the air, and many years later, I don't know. We're in dark times. We are in dark times, and I wanted to get closer. For me, I wanted to. I don't do movies for people. I do movies for me, and I needed to be closer to Jesus. And I said, if I need to be close to Jesus, and I think I'm close to Jesus, there must be so many other people that aren't close to Jesus. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to scare you to Jesus. I think I'm going to scare your asses to Jesus. That's what I think. So I was like, okay. So then once I wrapped my head around that it's not a horror movie per se, and we're telling the story of a black woman that is never listened to, that we all understand what that is like. Black women, even Kamala, even right now, she's not listened to. By black women, she's not listened to. Once I understood that was the mission, and grounded in a situation that we all would believe, I could hopefully have people find their higher power through this. I think that's it, yeah.
It's interesting that you would say your mom was hesitant because she didn't want you to get that on you, because growing up in my house, we couldn't watch horror because it was like, that's how you let the devil in. So to use horror as this vehicle to tell this story was in and of itself a very profound decision. That I was really curious, how did that even play into the decision for you?
I'm never going to do it again. As an artist again, I wanted to do another type of cinema, another type of, I remember doing Empire, and I only did it because I wanted to check a box. Okay, let me just check this box so I can say I've done television. I had no clue it was going to be Empire, but I just and with Precious, it was about talking about my childhood. So I really want to just check a box of feelings, and with Butler, I did Butler because my mother was like, why are you doing all these crazy movies? Like, the people at the church think something happened to us. So can you just do a movie like Tyler Perry? And I'm like, it's like, I'm not Tyler Perry, Mom. And so she said, can you just do a nice movie? And I was like, okay. So I did The Butler to shut Miss Jones up down at the church, and that was my PG-13. But I do it for a reason. Everything is for a reason, and for this, it was really about, for me, my connection, my personal connection to Jesus, and scaring my son to Jesus. There's always a reason. So that was, I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. Teddy, I want to go to you next. Having seen the film and so much of your work, one as a public theologian, but two also at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, is around the curation of Black religion. What do you see as kind of necessary conversation points and starters for the church coming out of this film?
Oh, that's a great question. There's so many conversations. One, again, Lee, thank you for this film. I think the first thing to your point around horror is that religion is horror, right? Church can be horror for people, right? Many people have experiences of church hurt, of church trauma, of things that have happened in a space that's supposed to be a hospital. And they've experienced horror in that space. And so I think what the film does is it begins to complicate that while the church can be this healing space, there's also been horror in there, right? And so I think that it lends itself to a conversation, particularly when we're talking about our two youngest generations who are not necessarily in the church, millennials and Gen Z. That it offers another opportunity for me that I would tell churches to screen the film, right? Because you can have conversations around horror. You can have conversations around demons, right? That while I grew up very Baptist and Pentecostal, right? So I have this understanding of demons, but also sometimes demons is ourselves, right? It's the own thing, our own struggles, our own things that we're dealing with that keep us out of alignment, right, with the divine. So I think that that's a conversation. It's a conversation about generations and youth and being able to engage them. I think another conversation that can be had out of this film is mental health. Because she is seen as crazy, right? And this role, and I have plenty of Black women here, so I'm not going to speak, but this role of a Black woman being seen as crazy because something she knows deep down, as the old folks would say, on the inside, right, is happening to her children and to her family. And so I think it's a conversation around mental health because oftentimes we don't have those conversations in the Black church. We're starting to, right, have those conversations, but that there's some work that we don't demonize people who have mental illnesses, which happens sometimes in our traditions. In particular, sometimes happens in the traditions that this film is standing in, right? And this charismatic tradition of we got to cast that demon out of them, right? No, they need some medication, right? Or no, they need some help regularly. And so I think it lends itself to a myriad of conversations. And lastly, I'll say it's a conversation about material culture. From the crosses, from the iconography, from the art, as we open up and she says Basquiat, right? It has lended itself to conversations about religious art. And what does it mean to have a cross? Many folks, somebody in here is sitting with a cross around their neck, right? What does it mean to walk around with this horrendous thing, right? What does it mean to walk around with this thing that killed Jesus, right? But we glorify this thing now. Right? And so I think you can have conversations, a myriad of them, but those are kind of four that I think start. But I recommend this film for churches, right? I actually recommend it for mosques too, because there's similarities in demons and this understanding theologically of the demonic that I think is really rich.
You know, it's so interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Whoa. No, you just did. I mean, yeah.
No, it's I'm gonna say this in piggybacking off of what you said, but the first time, and I'm going to Dr. Phillips, but the first time I saw it, I said, "Dang, I wish I was still teaching," because this would be required viewing for my class. I think about, and particularly with my work around Black women in faith, Black women are still one of the most religious demographics in the country, right? That like nobody is more religiously active than Black women, right? You have a film that grounds the religious experience of a working class Black woman. Not upper middle class, right? We're not looking at, if we're thinking about like, if I'm thinking about Evelyn Higginbotham's Righteous Discontent, where we get the politics of respectability, Ebony would definitely have been one of the women that Black church women would have shunned, right? And so we have this profound conversation centered in her life. I want to ask you, Dr. Phillips, like, especially because we're talking also about mental health, given that hyper-religiosity has become a DSM diagnosis, and that very much so, Ebony would be considered to be having a mental health crisis. How do we even begin to talk about demon possession, mental health, and the reality of this existence in our churches?
So you ask a specific question about demon possession, mental health, and Black women. And in your movie, Lee, I appreciated towards the end the crucifixion of the young woman, which points to, and I think that you were also saying it with Kamala, just Black women in general in their spaces tend to be crucified. Yet in religious scholarship, there is a discourse called womanist discourse, and womanist discourse looks at the faith experiences and the journeys of Black women and pushes against this notion of the Black woman always having to be the surrogate and always having to be or always kind of inhabiting or filling the space of the sacrificial space, like Jesus, and being crucified. So that's one way of thinking about putting into conversation the work that's already out there around Black women and their faith experiences. Another way of thinking about it is from a biblical scholarship perspective, which is to say that throughout the Bible, there was the mute and the demoniac, and biblical scholars write about this all the time, and the question was, were they really demon possessed or were they mentally ill? And so we have these types of conversations in the academic spaces, in the classroom spaces, about how to understand these types of figures in the Bible. I want to, though, also point to and actually move beyond the demonic to talk about what I see as the some, in terms of their many merits, but with respect to the Black church, the merit of your film, it goes a little bit opposite of what you were saying. Your film, the plot unfolds around demon possession. However, and I don't know if this was the intent of your writers, however, there's conversations to be had about spirit possession, more generally speaking. I think it was beautiful, even though this film unfolds around demon possession, juxtaposed were the Apostles' Church, where the Spirit was moving high, as well as Tasha Smith's character, where she is the priest and the prophet and the shaman, the healer, right? And often in Hollywood we make there's humor around the preacher. However, the role technically of the preacher or the pastor is to be a priest, to take care of the well-being of those in the congregation. That's priestly, prophetic, deliver the message from God, but also press against oppressive structures. Or the shaman. The shaman is the healer, is the intermediary. And your film allows us to begin to juxtapose the higher spirits to the lower spirits, which is a demon possession. And that's important to talk about. Spirit possession does not only happen in the body. you can go into, for those who are churchgoers, even the last few weeks I had a lot on my mind, and I was going into church one way, and I left another way because the spirit was high. And that's what you showed in those other scenes. You put against the demonic possession how the spirit moves in other places, and that's an important conversation. Another thing that comes up, which is important for Black folks to talk about, as well as in the white churches, is this theology of an ethics of good and bad, right? You can't talk about demon possession without talking about sin, right? And so you start these conversations about, and they may be binary conversations, right? Like this is good and this is bad, but they're conversations to be had. And your film allows us to begin to talk about the ways in which how we understand sin produces bad, or what we understand as bad and what we understand as good. And then also, which is important for Black folk, and I think this was beautifully done. We do ourselves a disservice to only look at demon possession if we don't look at individual sin in connection to systemic sins. And I think you were trying to say that. I don't know. Yeah, you're smiling. You were saying let's put the spiritual, and a classic writer who did that, The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin, who wrote about his experiences in the church, but always put the spirituality into context with the material culture, but also with the material. So the question is, who is sinning and what is the sin? Is the sin drugging? Is the sin addiction? Is the sin being in interracial relationships? Is the sin being in relationship with Black men who then compromised your daughter and you knew it? Like what is the sin? But ultimately you're saying you cannot, or for me, you're saying you cannot talk about demon possession and individual sin without talking about family secrets and sins, and without talking about more general, systemic sins. Is the sin poverty? We always broke. Is the sin being impoverished and having to grow up in neighborhoods where people are struggling? And that ties to systems and the way systems oppress. So your Teddy, you said it. Your film, in terms of all the themes that come up, it's just important.
Can I just say, thank you. Can I just, we've never met, and it's like they were on set with me on my journey as I tried to articulate this very complicated, very complex work. It really was it was almost you on my journey as you're both talking about it from two different perspectives. It's crazy, really crazy. But it was the hardest thing I'm never going to do it again, because it was the hardest thing to do what it is that y'all were just saying, and try to express that artistically, because there's such nuance in everything. And so, and then there is, I'm at a loss for words, because I'm just blown away that you all understand it to that level. My fear was that the church people would not respond to this, because there's lots of cursing in it. She's an alcoholic. She slaps her, and so I just keep thinking of Miss Jones at my mother's friend at the church. I can't watch that. I can't watch that. I hear her now. You know what I mean? And but as African Americans, we are complicated, and it's not. I'm the first to say that I was an addict. Patti LaBelle saved me. And so and she showed me Jesus,
Mm.
and I felt him. Do you know what I mean? So it's real, and I want people to experience the Ebony's flaws.
Yeah.
But
We
I
get
don't know.
it.
There's the church, and then there's spirituality,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and the politics of church is like, well, I don't know. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know, it's and I we're actually going to go to a clip that I think really underscores this piece about what it looks like to contend with faith as one a healing space, but also the ways that you work to also have us confront the ways that many people who we have hurt and harmed may not be receptive to how we have now found faith and use it. So can we go and we'll talk more on the other side of this clip, but let's see it. So Karl Marx is one of we attribute the religion is the opiate of the masses, and I wanna open to all of you to respond. What are your thoughts on people using religion as a way to cope with life's traumas?
Okay. Um, so I have authored articles at the intersection of faith and medicine. And I don't want us to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think we need to put things and realize that life is a lot of gray areas. Put it in tension with one another. So you could look at the use of religion as a defense, which is what Andra Day's character Ebony was saying to her mom, like you're hiding behind this cross, but you haven't changed, or you're using religion to avoid the problems in your life. Yet her mom, we can't measure her mother's change. And she could potentially be using religion in that way as a defense. And she potentially could, from Ebony's perspective, not changed. Yet we see her in the pews. We see that the religion is bringing joy to her. We see that she, in some respects, is confessing a certain degree of transformation. She's no longer walking this journey by herself, because when she goes to the church house, there are people she doesn't know. I don't know all of your stories. We all come in, this is a church. We all come in here with our own individual stories. So we cannot condemn or judge, like, okay, the ears might be offended by the cursing, but people go to church because they come in with stories that become part of the collective stories and the collective narrative of the church. And so we have to hold in tension what she confesses, which is, I've been changed. But you know what? Deliverance happens daily. That's why it's called deliverance. We don't see the part 2. You only gave us part 1. You gave us the exorcism, the expelling of the demon. But every day we wake up, whether or not you participate in some kind of spiritual discipline, you're being delivered from something. Okay? So that's the beginning of the answer to your question from my point of view.
Well, I
Holding
wanna
intention.
ask a follow up to that, because I mean, to be fair, in the movie we do still see Alberta smoking, drinking, and chasing men. So,
Yep.
I mean, to me, that is the average Baptist deacon. But
Hey, Netflix, are we taping this? Are we taping this? I hope we're getting this. Netflix. Oh, good. It's good.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
we came from a tradition that the Baptist covenant had to be changed because we wouldn't say the part and refrain from strong drink, because that was the part when everybody would start mumbling because we wasn't gonna say that part.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if deliverance is daily, because I remember growing up hearing whatever you did to get free, you got to do that to stay free.
Absolutely.
Right? So if deliverance is daily,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like for Ebony? What does that look like for people who are trying to walk it out?
Okay, so I'm just going to say this, and because I don't want to hog the mic. Faith is enough, but it is not all. Ebony might need to go into talk therapy. Talk therapy does not mean that you are crazy. We all go through this life, this journey, and there are some places in our lives where we experience maladjustments for whatever experiences we're going through. And we might need the support and the help of others. And so it might not be enough to continue to talk to family members or friends. It might be that you go and speak to a professional. Or it might be a circle in church, like in church there are grief circles. Or, and I love this about AA, because AA is the church. AA realizes that deliverance is daily. That's why people identify and say, I'm an alcoholic. They may be clean for 12 years, but they know the temptation. And if they drink, they may fall back in. It's the affirmations and so on and so forth is what would be considered religious activity. But coming in and not feeling isolated, having those structures in place, because not everybody can afford talk therapy, meaning, going to a psychologist, but finding those types of support systems. And so a movie like this can't give you all, but, and that's why I said Alberta may not look like we can't measure. Right. I believe that in some respects she had, because she felt
she was.
spirit.
That was the way she was.
Huh?
She had definitely changed.
Yeah, she had definitely changed. Okay. And so, and I sensed that, because she was able to sense the disturbance, the spiritual disturbance, whether you want to call it demonic or not. It was a spiritual disturbance. She had changed. And like I said, we can't measure it. And for her, the church was her support system. So faith is enough, but it is not all. And we need to understand that and figure out how we can, find those areas of support so that the deliverance that daily happens keeps us free.
I think, to your point of the text in Mark, when the demons asked Jesus to cast them into the pig, I think of Apostle Paul when he says 3 times I prayed for this thing and it ain't went nowhere, right? I think of the other parts of the text where Jesus has to ask the demon, what's your name, right? That we live in a culture, I also think about the video when the brother said he was delivered, right? That we live in a culture where deliverance is instantaneous.
That's what
Right.
what we think.
And that's what we think, right?
Right.
That I think what the film does is it shows us the journey of deliverance,
Mm-hmm.
right? That the text says when the Spirit comes back, it comes back stronger,
Mm-hmm.
right? That every day that I wake up and I do my affirmations and I pray, knowing that that thing
Has the potential.
has the potential to overtake me, right?
Mhm.
And we see with Ebony, as she's walking down the street, that thing overtook her one day and the next day she was okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? That, to your point, that's faith,
Mm-hmm.
right? That faith is not this magical, I am changed today,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
In
it
an
is the
instant.
journey,
Yeah.
right? That Paul says, this thing may never go anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? But deliverance is every day that I wake up and I try again,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I also think that it becomes dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
that religion can be a fix for people.
Oh, absolutely.
That we see it time and time again. But I think I'll go back. Historically, I think it's always important to contextualize why religion was important to Black people,
Mm-hmm.
right? That we got to this country as a religious people,
Mhm.
right? We weren't overwhelmingly Christian, but we were
That's right,
Muslim.
Muslim.
We were practicing traditional African religion,
Absolutely.
right? That faith was one of the only things we had when a system that literally
Yeah.
was enslaving our physical bodies.
Right.
Faith was the only escape we had.
Absolutely.
Right? Spirit going into hush harbors, into the woods to practice at night was the only thing we had.
Yes.
Right? That God or the divine or whatever we called that thing would be able to rescue us from
Yes.
this. Right? And so I think that some of this is generational.
Yeah.
Right? And some of the saints would, in Pentecostal spaces, they may even say it's generational curse. Right? Some things
Yes.
we've passed,
Yeah.
right? That this fix is often the thing that tells us when life and hell is breaking loose all around us,
We got faith.
that we got faith,
That's right.
right? That's the one thing that we can stand on to say that when white supremacy comes for us, we can fight against it.
Right.
Right? When hell is breaking loose in my household, that's the one thing I have. And so I think it is beautiful, right?
Mhm.
That we are, to your point, Candice, that we are this religious demographic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also is dangerous at times
Mm.
because it keeps us from doing the inner work.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
keeps us from doing the work of deliverance in our own home, right? That you don't always need an apostle sometimes,
Yeah.
right? You need to go and look at yourself in the mirror
Your own apostle.
and be your own apostle, right? Because again, the apostle, her character even said, I don't need an intercessor. So you were speaking to the Catholic Church, right? That we don't need an intercessor.
That's right.
For her, it's like, I can go to the throne myself,
Right.
right? People got altars in their own home.
Right.
Deliver yourself,
Mm.
right? That I think is part of the work, right,
Mhm.
of deliverance, is that I think the film helps us decentralize in some ways that process while still pointing to the importance of faith in Black community,
Yes.
right? That, and particularly amongst Black women. And so I think that we sit in that tension and we see that tension in the film, even when I don't want to give that part away, but that it is powerful when you also realize that sometimes the clergy don't have the power either.
Mm.
So what I love is you alley-ooping us to the second
Oh,
clip, cause yeah, let me go. Clip 2. My favorite, well, I ain't gonna say it's my favorite part. One of my favorite parts is when she says that the demon laughed at her, cause that goes back to, since you brought up the scripture, that goes back to Acts 19, where it says, Jesus we know, Paul we know, who are you? Right? Like, it is this idea, right, that, like, you are unable to, that there has to be some level of power and some level of authority
Yeah.
that you have and you possess in order to access that level of power. I want to ask though, particularly because this is not the same traditions that this isn't a universal church tradition. How would you explain this to somebody who may watch this and say, "What is Lee over here doing what Lee want to do?" Right? Like, how do you explain that? Like, this is a deeply understood, held tradition and understanding within faith communities.
So, so you're asking about the apostles' more charismatic Pentecostal tradition? Is that
Yeah,
what you're asking?
I'm asking one, like, what does it look like for us to have a conversation? How do we explain this to people who do not come from these worlds, and who may just readily dismiss this as theater, may just readily dismiss this as entertainment. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll start.
I gotta say something.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm fascinated by what y'all just said about
Okay.
the Gen Xers or what
Mhm.
you call them?
Millennial.
I didn't, I didn't realize that I was going to be tapping in on that. I think I'm going to be tapping in on that. I think that they all identify with Ebony in some sort of way.
Mhm.
You know, she's alone, and these kids are alone out here right now. And I was unaware of that until this very moment. You talked about the Gen Xers, Gen Zs, and
Yeah, that's okay.
Gen Z
Yeah.
Mhm, you got
and
it.
I really do think that you're on some else. You're talking about something
No,
else.
go ahead,
but
go ahead.
I think that it's obvious to me that I'm speaking to my nieces and my nephews. My niece is her age, and I didn't understand. She called me up. She never calls me. She's got 4 kids. She lives in West Philly. She lives paycheck to paycheck. I take care of her sometimes. And she called me up and said that she has never seen a film like this. Like she saw herself in Ebony, and I didn't make it for her. I made it for me, But she identified with Ebony. So I think she was 33, 34.
She's a millennial.
She's millennial.
So it's that, and so she, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for that black woman with those 4 kids
Mhm.
at 33, single mother, it resonated open for her, and she found herself moved, and she liked this is her favorite film of mine. So I think that, and you said this, you were talking about this. I know we were talking about something
That's
else, but you
okay.
talked
No,
about the
we-
millennial, and I
look,
was like, whoa.
We go where you want to go.
Yeah.
Can I point to that? Because I think you showed 2 aspects of millennial faith in this film, right? That one, Ebony is partying and having fun. And for many black millennials, particularly today, who are not overwhelmingly in the church, clubs are spiritual spaces. They're churches. Brunch are spiritual spaces. Music festivals are spiritual spaces. Meetups and Instagram groups are spiritual spaces. And so seeing Ebony in this space, I got for the point of the film, I didn't need Ebony to be redeemed to the church
Mhm.
because she never lost God,
Mhm.
right? That when she was dancing in her house with the she was still in the spirit,
Mhm.
right? When she was out hanging out with her friends, she was still in the spirit, and it resonates with your niece, I believe, and with many millennials, because the church is not the space that many millennials are desiring because of the horror of the church, because of the hypocrisy of the church, because of the theologies, particularly around LGBTQIA plus individuals, around women, around the dogmas of tithing and prosperity and all of those things. And so I think what we see in Ebony is a generation, right? And the largest generation now in the world is millennials, right? Black millennials are the largest generation in our community now. And so thinking about it, I think you show this beauty of them rolling dice and having fun, right? And that being spiritual, right? That she's in it. They're all feeling it. The music start going. We play some music in here. These black bodies start moving, right? Because we are moving to the drum. We're moving to spirit. But then we see this reconciliation, right? Because there's still a subset of folks. There's still a remnant, right, that is in that space. And so I think when we're talking about generations, I think you show it. You show this boomer, her mother, right? You see this millennial. You see these Gen Z children. One wants to go to church. The others don't want nothing to do with it, right? And so you show this dichotomy of what's happening in our community today, right? That I think is beautiful. And again, that's why I say particularly for churches when they dying, right? In a very in membership wise, they are declining, right? But I think the film becomes another way that we can engage faith, right, and faith conversations and engage spirit that is not in the traditional podium, stand, speak, deliver,
Yeah.
right? But that this in and of itself is church,
Absolutely.
But
right? To your point.
To your point too, and I want y'all to, y'all know when y'all go home, y'all press play, so that y'all can watch this. But also, what is beautiful about this movie as it relates to millennials and faith is that you're also seeing a very different conversation about millennial parenting, right? Like, you hear Ebony apologize to her children. I mean,
Exactly.
I love my mama.
No
My
apologies.
mama apologized with PayPal
Yeah.
and Cash App, and we love those. But how amazing would it have been for me to hear, I'm sorry? How amazing would it have been to hear, I'm trying? Like there was one scene with her and her oldest son.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I don't want you to leave.
Yep, don't leave.
Because I'm trying to figure out how something that good came out of me. Like, the fact that she could say that to her son and say, I'm sorry, right? So we're seeing, and that is a reflection of the kinds of commitments that younger parents are having to say, I don't want to be what I saw, right? Like, even as there were levels of abuse in that home, the way that she felt, struggling with trying to not be her mom, trying to create the very environment that she wished that she had for her mother, I think that that's another piece that makes this such a profound work, that it gives space for millennials, for Gen Z, to even begin to talk about, this may be why I don't go to church, but this is also why I'm committed to being a different kind of mama. This is why I'm committed. I might not rock with church, but I'm committed to being a different kind of daddy because I saw this in my home and I didn't want to be a part of it. I don't want to do it.
And that's another form of deliverance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I also, because we have these conversations in my African American religion, society, and culture class, I don't want us to pit the generations against one another.
Absolutely.
What both of you said was beautifully stated, but I also saw in Glenn Close's character, who was an older generation. I don't know if she was actually boomer. She may have looked boomer, but maybe was she supposed to be Generation X, or is she supposed to be a boomer?
No, she a boomer.
Oh, she a boomer. Okay.
Okay.
And so, nevertheless, it's interesting. Her character is interesting because she's trying.
Yeah.
She's trying. Yeah. She knows her sin.
Yeah.
She ended up in the church space. She needs the space, and she still needs her daughter. She needs both.
Yeah, she needs both.
She needs both.
Yeah.
And so she comes and she lives with the family.
Yeah.
And those are her babies.
Yeah.
And she took that back to Monique like she's like, she wasn't playing. She's like, we've got to protect, and that's why she was also hard on her daughter.
Yeah.
I did it wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now it's time for us, you and me, to do it right for them.
Yeah.
And so the boomers, but at the same time, and I said it the two times that I saw the movie, which was last night and the screener, when she found out that her cancer treatments were being paid for by Ebony, and she said something. She said, I found out. And both of them stand there awkwardly. I'm like, say thank you.
Yeah, she says, I don't know what to say.
I don't know what to say. And I kept saying, just say thank you.
Yeah.
Say thank you. And she couldn't get it out. Yeah. So
I mean, that's purposeful and dysfunction at its core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She never says I love you either.
Yeah.
But she
and
showed,
yet we know it.
Yeah.
she
We
shows it
know
by
it.
her
We know it.
actions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know it. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
The way she's
both
braiding
go.
her hair, you know, the
Mhm.
way she's braiding her hair. I mean,
Mhm.
like, and that's also something else I wanted to get into. Has nothing to do, well, sort of something to do with this, but that, we've never seen a white. We all know in Alberta,
Mhm.
a white woman that
Mhm.
goes with black men and only black men, has a black child and black grandkids, and is embraced by this system.
Right, right,
We've
right.
never seen that before.
Right.
Uh, yeah, you guys really understand. You've dissected the film in a way that is very emotional for me, because you really understand the core of what it is that I was trying to do, and it's walking an eggshell. It's like walking on eggshells, as I was telling. It's a very hard story to tell.
Mhm.
Let's we have one last clip that actually stays in this in the vein of this conversation. So let's go there and then continue on. I wanna so the clip that we have there is it's when Ebony loses custody of her children following some events. And I think one of the pieces that struck me about that moment is that further into that, you have Monique's character, the social worker, coming to the reality that this is not an instance of a woman abusing her children, but that something else is going on. And you have Anjanou Ellis's character, who is the apostle, who works with Ebony to one, get to a place of strength where she can fight for her family. And there's this part, we don't see it in this clip, but she says, Ebony, before you can do anything, I want you to know that you're loved. I want you to know that you're enough. Like it was this moment that when I first saw it, because I've seen it about 5 times at this point, but the first time I saw it, I love it. I'm telling you. The first time I saw it, I was like, but that's odd to say. And then I saw it again, and I said, I know exactly why she said it, right? And to that, I want to ask this question, even in light of this clip, this final question before we open it to everyone. What do you all think needs to happen in our religious spaces to welcome women and parents like Ebony, who are fighting systemic issues, who are doing the best that they can, but feel like they don't have anywhere to go? And if the church is to be this place that it has always said it would be, this sanctuary, what does it need to do to be who the prophetess and who the apostle was to her?
I'm gonna just jump in really quick, and that's the reason why I made the movie, because my niece don't have no place to go. That's the answer right there. I mean, I think that this opens up the conversation about what are we going to do with our kids.
Yeah.
So I don't, and I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm only a filmmaker, but she threw that question to y'all.
Don't you love
I would still say spiritual leader. They come in many different ways.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Go for it, and then I'll go for it.
I'm going to roundabout quickly to it. One, I do think this film also opens conversations about theology, particularly that part. It's one of my favorite parts when she talks about fallen angels, because we don't see that in the text. It's not in the canonical text, right? But it's in the book of Enoch. So you open up conversations around extra biblical texts that most people aren't reading in their 66 books that they quote on Sundays or throughout the week. And so I think it opens another rich conversation about theology and biblical scholarship that is extremely rich, because we're always trying to understand the problem of evil. Where does evil come from, right? That this idea of Lucifer is a construct, right? We'll go there later. But to that point, I do a lot of workshops and things with clergy across the globe, and I I'm often I say this, and it's often hard. I don't think many millennials are going back to the space, right? We have had a global pandemic. Millennials are not children. The oldest millennial is 42 now, right?
Yes,
They have
we
children.
are.
They run businesses and corporations. They are all we are grown, right? That I think that ship has sailed, um, and I think the power of the church is meeting millennials where they are, right? If I'm at the club, come to the club. Right? If I am a single mother and I can't live in that space, come to my door, check on me. Right? That I think the church has to go be the church. Right? The commission said, go therefore into the world. Right? Not to bring them to you, to go back out and to do the work. Right? And so for me, this film is pushing that. Anjani goes to her. She doesn't originally come to her. Right? She goes and compels her. That's what the text says, right? She compels her in. She takes her to eat, right? They broke bread. They had a meal. She met her where she was, right? And so for me, that is an example of what the church has to be, right? That it cannot rest on laurels anymore, right? Black folks aren't. We ain't persuaded that we got to go no more, right? That we are not. We don't feel we're not scared into church anymore. Right, in a way that our parents were, that whether you went out on Sunday, you still had to go, right, Saturday. But I think that that's the work. I think that the work of the church is to be the church in community, right, serve the remnant that's there, but also go out into the spaces where the ebonies live, right, go into the highways and the byways and where they find themselves and be the church, not trying to take over, not trying to tell people, right, because we need to also problematic sin, this idea of sin, but that you are in community with people, right? Ebony needed food. Ebony needed housing. She needs some bills paid. Meet that need. Then talk about Jesus, right? And so I think that's the work.
And I think both of you have answered the question. I mean, Candice, you said it when you said I sat with Ebony when and she says this. The apostle says, you think this is a transactional relationship. I'm not looking for anything from you. Lead with love. I mean, that's what the church, that is what the church should be leading with love, right? But then let me step back for a second. You brought up, in terms of religious scholarship, we learn about different denominations and so on and so forth. And in the more Protestant or evangelical Protestant faith, we don't study what is identified as the extra-canonical text. So the Book of Enoch is an extra-canonical text. The Catholic Church does. So, as a sociologist, we consider Black Catholics under the umbrella of a greater Black church tradition, because Black Catholics are Catholic, but they're also Christian. And so with that said, we're saying the church. There are many churches. And there are many churches leading with love. However, we have to find, with anything, the right fit for us. I'm an AME minister, I'm an AME pastor, but I also attend a church that's Unity and United, Hillside International Truth Center, and they push against saying we're the church. They say they're a spiritual center, and their theology is more inclusive. And so there are different churches out there, and there are different churches that lead with love. It's a matter of, and I don't know how to tell people to find that space, but I think it's like anything else. You visit, trial and error. You visit churches and you see what fits.
Thank you. We're gonna open it up. We have a question from a pastor first before we open. But before we go to him, there was we learned that on set every day, Lee Daniels had a pastor come and pray over the set, and that is a testament to how important faith not only was to the film itself, but ensuring that the atmosphere that
Oh, it was set from the
yeah
beginning.
was set.
It's interesting. The first day we did it, I got a call in from HR saying that because we had 300 or 400 people that are working on the film, and we got a call from HR saying that we couldn't pray, and that people were getting offended. And I said, okay, well then we don't have a film, so we need to. And then I sort of, my producers were like, well, you have to address it. So I brought everybody together and said, listen, I'm going to be praying every day, many times a day, and so anybody that doesn't want to hear it, you're free to go. And I think that there were a lot of non-believers that were there, but they stayed. They stayed.
Because you were leading with love.
Yeah.
You were leading with love. Yeah. And leading with love allows for free will. You released them and you said, essentially, I don't have anything against you if you don't want to participate. You're free to go.
Yeah.
And they exercise their free will to stay.
To stay.
Isn't that interesting?
Right. Pastor Rod, Hi. We're gonna start our Q&A with you. If you could stand and introduce yourself.
Of course. Again, it was for me. I don't make movies for other people. I make movies for me. And it was for me to learn scripture and for me to become closer to Jesus. So that was the mission for me. But I also knew that we were in dark times. And I thought that if I needed this journey, how many other people need this journey? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
She may have not had the faith or the understanding that she needed to combat
Mm-hmm.
the evil spirit, but she was never afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell when the demon had her on the ground.
Because who she call out for?
Yeah.
Jesus.
She wasn't afraid.
No,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
no,
Mm-hmm.
no.
She wasn't
Yeah.
afraid of the demon. And what was the bishop,
Apostle.
the apostle? She said that.
Yeah.
She said, I was afraid.
Yeah.
I had too much fear.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's why she lost the boy.
Mm-hmm.
She could not
Yeah.
muster up the strength to not be afraid.
Yeah.
You have the faith,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't fear it.
Yeah.
She knew in her head logically what it was going to take.
Mm-hmm.
Why she went in there knowing that she was scared is
Yeah.
beyond me, but
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to, I did want to just add, and I'm not a biological mother. I also think Ebony wasn't afraid because that theology of black motherhood
Mm-hmm.
that
Will kick in.
that kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
She saw herself losing her babies.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think about my own relationship with my own mother.
Yeah.
And when I hurt, she hurts more deeply. Like she is like I call her, like she's a lioness,
Mm-hmm.
as old as I am. And that I mean, I think in the end, that also assisted her in
Yes.
overcoming her own fears. Okay. And that opened the door to the willingness for her. I love the end when she
Don't
faced
tell him
it.
the end.
Don't tell him.
Don't
Oh,
tell
I'm
him
sorry.
the
I'm
end.
sorry. All right,
Look.
forget it.
Come on.
Press play.
Don't.
But we got
Listen.
time for one question. Since you had your hand up, we go ahead. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, I wrote my question down so I can make sure I get all the points. My name is Bree, co-founder of Smox Media Group and the Art Kinslow Foundation. So I'm a millennial. In my network, we have an expert. He's working on his doctorate in public theology. And his work is around what he's calling Black liberation theology. He's using breath work and sound baths. He and his wife have Masters of Divinity. So I wonder, because we're in these spaces working on new ways of theology and spirituality, if there are any thoughts on specialized screenings for millennials, Gen Zers,
Absolutely.
people who are 30, 31, 32, we're doing it. We're making it happen. And we believe in God and we believe in Jesus. But it's a different way that we're manifesting it. My husband and I are nomadic right now for a year. Every day, God provides our housing. Literally, we're living the story right now in the moment. So I wonder if there are conversations. This spin would be perfect. We have intellectual conversations like this all the time, just on the phone or just in a group chat.
I think that this is the start of it.
Yeah.
And this is the reason that we're here. Just I feel like for the first time, I feel like, thank you guys, because I really feel like I'm understood. You know, when I'm trying to explain the film to people, half of them aren't believers. So I feel like, like, where is this going? I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm crazy. And so I'm listening to you guys, and I'm sticking out my chest like, oh my God, the film is beautiful because it was made for you to understand, and it's made for people that are believers or that have the possibility to believe.
Yeah.
You know.
I first on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you guys for coming this evening. But in line with what Bree said, I definitely encourage you all, when you go press play tonight, to do so in community with do a watch party yourself and have conversations, because the 3 clips that you saw are not, they represent what we have all said is a truly profound work that wrestles with what it means to be faithful when everything around you gives you a reason not to be. And I want to thank you for finally saying yes to it. you gave us. You said something earlier about not wanting. You would never do this again. I don't think you have to. I think that what you have given us is a cultural production that we will be feasting on for some time. And I think the beauty of this is that it will also inspire other people to do their own pieces that give us the other aspects of the deliverance. So you don't have to do it, but we thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
We thank you for doing it.
Thank you for your yes.
Thank you guys.